Let's return to This Week in America. Here's your host, Rick Bratton.
Welcome back, everybody, coast to coast. This Week in America. The Journey of a Rainbow and the Poetic Journals by Minerva Garcia were titles she had in her subconscious mind since she was in high school. She never imagined that could be reality. Minerva is a microbiologist by profession, but her passion is poetry. She says that's where she is most comfortable and at ease. This collection of poems she hopes can reach people's imaginations to be able to bring to them a world that is nice and unique for the view. Minerva has been writing poetry since she was 8 years old, encouraged at age 5 to exercise verbally her poetic talents by her private teacher when her discovered the talents there, and it became for her, a life's passion. Minerva is a microbiologist by profession, a certified Spanish medical interpreter, published poet and scientist in major scientific journals, chosen as a guest speaker at a number of conferences and symposiums. Her poems have been featured on New York City radio, also participated in the New York City Marathon. Minerva Garcia, author of The Journey of a Rainbow, my poetic journal Mind Views, is our guest on This Week in America. Minerva, welcome to the program. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me and having me. My pleasure.
There's so much to talk about, and I love the poetry, this passion that you have. And let's talk about the inspiration for the book. The book is The Journey of a Rainbow. What was the inspiration behind putting this book together, this collection?
Well, it just gives me chills just asking me that question. I really love rainbows. It's just so beautiful to look, and the colors it brings. And to me, I start writing a poetry and I see a blank paper colorless. I also imagine same thing with the skies being cleared, and all of a sudden, whenever I have the need and I do to have the desired something special and even a crisis I may be going through, at the end I always see that rainbow. So to me, it was just a perfect title, The Journey of a Rainbow. And rainbow has always inspired me. And to me, I also have that symbolic to God because those colors are so beautiful to look at.
The book cover is beautiful as well. The content will really lift you. It's really inspirational. And poetry so well done by Minerva, our guest on the program. The color is breathtaking on the book cover as well. The book's available at Amazon, all the usual places. We'll talk about that as we go through the program tonight. How do you come up with different ideas of the poems as they come to you? How do those develop for you?
Well, for me, it's really life experiences coming to life. I've always see the first images that come to me. I see them, and then I see words as raindrops, and I'm able to capture them creatively and put them into paper. And to me, that's how I mold these words into poetry, perhaps being unique. And to me, at one point, I didn't realize this was a talent. As time emerged, I managed to realize there might be something special. And I continued writing, and I think it's okay now to view it and publish it and make sure that I get this before, it's too late. And now I'm glad that I did, and it's in paper and for the world to view it.
Well, and the world is glad that you did it as well. We're talking about the book, The Journey of a Rainbow, by our guest on the program, Minerva Garcia. The book's available at Amazon, all of the usual places. I love the collection that you have, the poems that you have in The Journey of a Rainbow. I want to ask you for your favorite. That's always sort of unfair to pick one because I'm sure they all are meaningful in their own individual ways. What are some of the poems that you like to talk about on the program that you're very proud of?
Well, for me, it's very hard to choose one.
Yes.
I do have a couple of them, and they all have stories behind it. I mean, one would be Challenge. I really love that poem because I faced so much challenge when I was running the New York City Marathon, as so many New Yorkers. And I had to put muscle a week before the marathon, and I didn't want to give up. And I did see my podiatrist where he said, you can't run. It's too late for you. But like me, never giving up, I went to physical therapist. They prepared me as an athlete, and I was ready, and I did my New York City Marathon. Actually under 4 hours. And and I stopped for about an hour and a half. So I'm very proud of that poem challenge. I also love The Supreme because it lifts me spiritually. I like the words of the Lord because I'm able to describe the Lord. For anyone that like to know who he is, I love How Do I Love Thee because I was inspired in high school on a project of a poem by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. I love Paper Frog the most because this Paper Frog poem came about because it was an image of a frog that was on my piano. I happened to tell my husband this paper would not disappear unless I write a poem, which I did. A few weeks later, I asked my husband, "Where is the paper?" He said, "I don't know." And it just happened to disappear. So it was meant for this poem to come to life.
Yes.
I was also inspired by Barack Obama. I wrote him a poem entitled Whiteout when I watched his bio in Larry King's life. And those were very inspiring me to hear words by a future president.
The book is The Journey of a Rainbow, My Poetic Journal Mind Views by Minerva Garcia, Garcia. The book is at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the usual places. You can link onto our website and get all of the information. Some of the other poems that in the book that I'd like to mention for a second here, the role of a poet, and I found that so interesting. What do you think the role of a poet is, the role of poetry in our lives?
It just happened that I entered a contest, and that contest involved being featured in the front page, having your bio, and also having to publish that poem. And they actually accepted all three prizes I earned for that poem. And it brings me back memory because back then I really didn't realize I was a poet. So to me, writing that collection of poems that being selected, it meant a lot to me because I was able to describe why do I write and why do poets write. They don't really write for themselves. They have these creative lines that they write, and it's really for the world to view it, or someone to see how they could come across some sort of understanding or some sort of different view or learn something from those lines. It could pick you up and it could lift you.
You know, I'm always impressed how a poet gets an idea, what the inspiration is for a poem. One of your poems is in the microbiology lab. I mentioned that by profession you are a microbiologist. So this poem, tell me the origin of this, where this came from, and obviously it's something at work that inspired the poetic side of you.
Yes, it did. Actually, I was working at that point at Bethesda Medical Center as a research scientist or a microbiologist, and one of my hobbies actually was to collect unusual bacteria. And my director asked me, "Do you think you have this bacteria, which was about 6 months ago, is very resistant?" At that point, I would remember that I was working on collecting unusual organisms, multi-drug resistance. Right now, it's becoming very important, CREs, very resistant organisms. And I said, if it's resistant and if it's unusual, I have it. I looked back into my collections, and I did find it. But the organism, it was collected in an agar, and it was really dry and shrinking. It was when my director did see it, she did say, "You cannot bring it to life." And I said, "I will bring it to life." It took me 2 weeks, and I did bring this bacteria, which was an E. coli, to life.
So I guess the moral is, don't tell you can't do something. That's basically telling you it may take a while,
right.
but Minerva's going to be able to do this. Yes, before it's over with, Minerva is going to be able to do this. What do you hope the reader takes away in reading the poems? How do you think the poems will affect the reader?
Well, I want the reader to take a message that, I write something, and from something came out. And from something that was nothing, it was created, just like life is. Life is created from somewhere, from somehow. A cell had to be put in. Who put it? That cell was put in by God. So there's always a beginning to come up to a rise to whatever it is.
The book is The Journey of a Rainbow by Minerva A. Garcia. The book's available at Amazon, the usual places. Go to our website. You can link on to get information on the book. It's interesting. I mentioned in the beginning, you were like 8 years old, wrote your first poem, age 5. A teacher, private teacher, discovered your talent for poetry. But it sounds like from what you've said so far, you might have been the last one to discover the talent that you had. When did you realize, hey, I actually am a poet?
No, well, it's interesting because my high school teacher gave us a project. We were reading mythology. We read plays, but it was actually almost the last week of high school that I was really struck by Elizabeth Barry Browning. And the project that I really loved, and I wrote an interpretation, was How Do I Love Thee? And the last day of class, my teacher asked me, are you going to college? I said, yes. And she said, what's your major? I said, biology. And she said, one day you will realize your talent. But it took my husband a couple of years later when I was going out with him, and it was Valentine's Day. I did not buy him a gift, and I came from college late from courses. And I went home, and all I had was a red Macy's bag. I gathered the red Macy's bag, took my scissors, and made it into a booklet. And there I wrote creative lines. When I gave it to him, he said, did you write this? I said, yes. He said, oh, you are a poet. I didn't say anything, but he says, do you save them? I said, no, I always throw them away. So he did tell me to save them, and the rest is history.
Well, it sounds like your
So I
husband...
own him. Yeah, I own him this discovery.
It sounds like he's been very supportive of you in this process of writing the poetry, and in the book, the Journey of a Rainbow. I mentioned the young age a couple of times. How young were you when you really started maybe getting serious about writing poetry?
I think it was when my brother passed away when I was in college that I wrote a poem titled Death, because to have the understanding, the realization at 18 years old that I was in college, that my brother is dying, and then that he passed on. So I was really angry at God for taking my favorite brother and the love of my life. It really developed that day when I wrote the Death.
Minerva Garcia is our guest. The book is The Journey of a Rainbow, a beautiful collection of poetry that will touch you. It will touch the reader and be a very positive experience. You do such a wonderful job with this. Are you planning a second book? Are you working on another collection?
Well, it's interesting because going through COVID now and being a microbiologist and experiencing so much death and hearing the news, that actually I wrote a book on a microbe coming to life. And it was so scary because it was seeing corona crisis scene coming to life, and I deleted it out. I couldn't experience my writing coming to life. But then I thought, I'm going to have to retitle my book, My Book's Coming to Life. But then I erased that because it's just too negative. We need something moving. So in 2 days, I came across writing, and I couldn't stop. So I have a new book, and I wrote it in 2 days. It's the inspiration from above.
That's fascinating. Now, will that be published anytime soon?
Well, I have to seek for a publisher, and I don't know, but the book is very uplifting. It's very inspirational, and I'm very happy with the product of my poems collections.
Well, and you're right. We need that now, and I wish you the best of success with that, and hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about that as well. Looking back at the poetry and basically at your life, is there anyone who's really influenced you the most, and why? Who were some of the people that influenced you along the way and made you who you are today, the poet that you are today?
Well, the first person that I have to thank is God, because he's been with me throughout, and I pray. He answers my prayers, and I pray for everybody. So for me, I think God is the focus of everything I do, and I'm grateful. Especially my mom, who passed away last year. She was so inspirational to me. She guided me in so many ways. If I could only be a little bit like my mom, I'll be so happy. My husband, who's been with me, I've been married to him for 35 years. I know him before I married him for 7 years. He's been this instrument and this torch that keeps me going. And through his love, I see everything so beautiful. So I really have him to thank for everything I have in my writing. Also, President Barack Obama, who inspired me tremendously. That he inspired me when I watched the bio in Larry King Live, that I was able to immediately grab a pen and start writing. And I wrote a poem for him, Erase Me Not, We Write Out, which I framed it and mailed that immediately to his headquarters, and also donated a check to his campaign. And I knew at the moment he would be our next president.
Is that the process? I'm always fascinated by that. It seems like you sort of get external stimulus as you're doing a poetry. It's not like you sit down and, okay, I'm going to write a couple of poems. It's sort of what comes to you, and when it hits you, you sit down. It's like when you put the book together in a couple of days. You watch Larry King, you see Barack Obama on there, you write a poem. Is that how it works? It's something that comes along and it stimulates you, and you're off writing poetry.
Well, I feel like I'm almost a magnet and a stimulant for everything I hear and see.
Yes.
I'm always at the moment, and I'm driven. So to me, I'm really driven by everything I see, hear. It could be the star, the moon, death. It could be anything. It could even be a pen. I bring life to a pen that doesn't know life. Because everything we have is valueless. I put value in everything that I see. And everything becomes important to me. So I'm inspired by the moment.
I love that perspective, because I've always felt that poets, and you in particular, I really believe, see things differently than most of us. It's sort of black and white that we look at, and you see something that's a little bit different, and you call it out to us. And that's why I think this book is doing so well and receiving the excellent reviews that it is. The Journey of a Rainbow. Our guest is Minerva Garcia. A few minutes left in the program. How about heroes in your life? You've done so much, athletically with the marathon, a microbiologist. So professionally, you've done quite a bit. A successful published poet now. Any heroes that you look up to?
Well, the hero that I have in my mind that's alive, they have to be my husband, because he recognized so much that I didn't see, and he saw so much potential. Not only that, he loves me for everything who I am, and I am grateful for that, and also for my beautiful son that I have, James. Just talking to him every day, he inspires me. And I'm so proud that God was able to give me this beautiful son, because I wasn't supposed to have a child. The doctor did tell me I was never going to conceive. So he's a miracle. He was even born on April Fool's Day, which is interesting.
Yes, it is.
But the most important, yes, but the most important hero in my life, it will have to be God. Because he's this eye in everything that I see. And he's that eye that lets me see. And whenever I think of the sea, which I love the water and the ocean, I think of God, because he drives us. And he's the driver that's driving everything. And when I am the driver's seat, I don't think I'm driving. I leave it up to him to drive.
You have such a special creative touch. You have that ability to let us see things maybe we normally wouldn't see. And another part of you, the microbiologist, you see a lot. You're fighting the whole pandemic in the hospital now. You see that on a daily basis. If you had a wish or two, what would it be for us?
Well, I think it's so, it might be not hard to understand, but to me, I would love to erase human suffering, and also for the human race to unite for the common good, and also to save our planet. Because, when humans suffered, I see we're all out of control. And it's so important for us as an individual, also as our planet, all of us, to see some sort of calmness among the storm. And right now, we're not seeing calmness. We see suffering. And what we expect for the future generations, even though we're hopeful there will be a vaccine. But the reality is, we hope it will be coming soon. But until it will come, we all have to be patient and strive. And it's important to accept for who we are and what we have. But it would be great if all of us get together as a common goal, and to seek love, happiness, and to treat ourselves with respect, and also our planet, because our planet is screaming and bleeding. And I wish there's something we could do as a common good.
And you're helping us by the book, The Journey of a Rainbow. This gives us the opportunity to sort of slip away in to break away from the world that we're in now, which it can be totally chaotic, and understand a world of beauty, of love. It's all in the poems contained in the book, The Journey of a Rainbow. I mentioned the book available at Amazon, the usual places. You're on Facebook as well, aren't you?
Yes, I'm on Facebook.
And what's the best way to find you? Is under your name?
They could put Minerva Frias Garcia. Frias is my maiden name, and they should be able to find me on Facebook.
That would be good, and a chance to follow and see how Minerva is coming and getting the second book published out there as well. The book we're talking about, The Journey of a Rainbow, My Poetic Journal Mind Views by Minerva A. Garcia, Garcia. The book's available at Amazon, the usual places. We'll have all that information on our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Minerva, a pleasure learning about you, having you on the program today. I really appreciate this. Thank you for taking time and being with us on the program.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, and it's been my pleasure.
It has been fun having you with us. And the book, The Journey of a Rainbow, My Poetic Journal Mind Views by Minerva A. Garcia. Keep it in mind for holiday gift giving. Give something a little special this holiday season with a book beautifully done by Minerva Garcia. The book is The Journey of a Rainbow. We're back on today's program right after these messages.
This Week in America is online. You can visit our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Scott Pinkerton, Associate Producer of This Week in America. Jay Anderson, Segment Producer. Ben Watson, Webmaster. Otto Bechet, Director of Engineering and TV Production. This Week in America produced and is a trademark of Blue Funk Broadcasting, LLC. For information on all of our guests and to listen to this week's show, our website again at thisweekinamerica.us. And I'm Sean Bratton, Executive Producer of This Week in America.